You think you know how your family will betray you until you are breathing with one lung and your newborn is in a glass box without a single relative nearby. That night, my parents did not just fail to show up, they refused my daughter like she was a nuisance to avoid. Then my grandfather walked in with a thick briefcase and said the one thing that changed everything. My name is Paloma Redfern, and I am 35 years old. The first thing I felt was not pain. It was the absence of weight. For 9 months, I had carried a bowling ball low in my pelvis, a constant, grounding pressure that made walking a waddle and sleeping a negotiation. Now, as the fog of anesthesia began to lift, that pressure was gone. My hands flew down, panic spiking my heart rate monitor into a frantic staccato. My fingers met soft, deflated skin and the thick, gauzy ridge of a bandage. My stomach was empty. I tried to sit up, but the world tilted violently to the left. A sharp, tearing fire ripped across my lower abdomen. I gasped, choking on the dry, recycled air of the intensive care unit. The room smelled of antiseptic and metallic blood. It was the smell of a place where people come to bargain with God. A nurse was there instantly. She was not the warm, maternal figure you see in movies. She looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed with red. Wearing scrubs that had seen a 12-hour shift, she pressed a gentle hand to my shoulder. "Lay back. Honey," she said. "You are okay. You are alive. Where is she?" My voice was a broken croak. I sounded like I had swallowed gravel. "Is she alive?" "She is in the NICU," the nurse said. "She is small, but she is fighting. 4 pounds, 6 ounces, 4 pounds. That was too small. That was terrifyingly small." The accident came back to me in jagged flashes. The rain on the windshield, the intersection at Riverton, the blinding lights of a pickup truck that decided a red light was just a suggestion, the sound of metal screaming against metal, the steering wheel crushing my chest. "I need to see her," I said, trying to push past the pain. "You can't," the nurse said firmly. "You lost a lot of blood. Paloma, your lung collapsed. We just got the chest tube stable. You need to stay flat." I looked around the room. It was stark, empty. Usually, in situations like this, there are flowers. There are hushed whispers of family members huddled in the corner. There is a husband holding your hand. There is a mother stroking your hair. There was no one. "Where is Elliot?" I asked. "He is on a video call with the NICU staff." She said, "He is still stuck in Chicago. The storm grounded everything. He has been trying to rent a car to drive back, but the highways are flooded. And my parents?" I asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and pathetic. The nurse hesitated. It was a hesitation that told me everything. She checked my IV drip, avoiding my eyes. "There is a private nurse with the baby," she said. "A what?" "Your husband hired a private pediatric nurse from an agency to sit with your daughter," she said. Since family could not make it, the words hit me harder than the airbag had. Since family could not make it, my parents lived 18 minutes away. Not 18 hours. 18 minutes. I closed my eyes, fighting the hot sting of tears. I refused to cry. Crying would hurt my incision. I reached for my phone on the bedside table. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb fracture running through the time which read 2:14 in the morning. There were 17 missed calls from Elliot. 0 from my mother, 0 from my father, 0 from my sister, Delaney. I called Elliot. He picked up on the first ring. The background noise was the chaotic roar of an airport terminal in crisis. "Paloma," he choked out. "Oh God. Paloma. I am driving. I finally got a car. I am 6 hours away. I am coming. I am driving as fast as I can." "I am okay," I lied. The pain was an 8 out of 10. "Is the baby okay?" "She is stable," he said. "I hired a woman named Marin to stay with her. She is sending me updates every 10 minutes. I did not want our girl to be alone in that box." "Paloma. I did not want her to wake up and see no one. Why isn't my mother there?" I asked. My voice was cold. It scared me how cold it was. Elliot went silent. The silence stretched out. filled only by the rhythmic whoosh of his windshield wipers fighting the rain. "Elliot," I said, "tell me. I called her." He said, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "I called her the second I got the news. I told her you were in surgery. I told her the baby was coming early and it was bad. I told her I was trapped in Illinois. And she said no. She said no. She said," and I am quoting here, "Paloma, do not drag us into Paloma's drama. We are at a charity event. We cannot just leave drama." That was the word they always used. When I worked 3 jobs to pay off their second mortgage, my exhaustion was drama. When I refused to sign a loan for Delaney's luxury car, my boundaries were drama. And now, bleeding out in an ICU with a daughter fighting for breath in a plastic box, my near-death experience was just more drama. "What charity event?" I asked. "It is Thursday night." She said it was the Riverton Animal Shelter Gala. Elliot said, "But Paloma," "What I heard them." "You heard what I heard, the background noise." Elliot said, "It was not a gala. Galas have string quartets or bad DJ music. This sounded like machines. Electronic noises. Cheering. Like a casino. But cheaper." I lowered the phone. A coldness that had nothing to do with the hospital air conditioning settled into my bones. I knew exactly where they were. There was a new place that had opened up 3 months ago. The high-stakes sports lounge. It was not a casino, technically, because that would be illegal in this county, but it had those electronic skill games that looked and sounded exactly like slot machines, and rows of screens showing horse racing. It was a dark, smoky hole where people went to burn money they did not have. They were not at a charity event. They were gambling. I looked at my phone again. I scrolled back through my messages with my mother. There was one from Tuesday, 2 days ago. "Do not go into labor this week. Paloma, I am busy with the event. I do not have time to babysit." I stared at the words, babysit, as if visiting her dying daughter and premature grandchild was a chore, as if she would be doing me a favor. For 10 years, I had been the spine of this family. I was the one who fixed the leaks. I was the one who paid the property taxes so the county would not take the house. I was the one who smoothed over every crisis, every bad decision, every emergency that always seemed to require a 4-figure check. I had bought into the lie that this was what families did. You help, you sacrifice, you show up. But they did not show up. They were 18 minutes away, sitting in front of a glowing screen, feeding $20 bills into a machine, while strangers cut me open to save my child. The pain in my chest flared, a hot, angry spike. I took a shallow breath. The monitor beeped faster. "I am going to hang up now. Elliot," I said, "drive safe. Do not speed. I am alive. She is alive. That is all that matters. I love you," he said. "I am going to burn that town down when I get there. Paloma, I swear it. Focus on driving." I said. I ended the call. The room was silent again. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling tiles. I counted them. 142 dots on the tile directly above my head. I thought about the transfer that was scheduled to go out tomorrow morning. The first of the month. $4,800. It started as $2,200, 10 years ago, just to help with the refinance. Mom had said, just until Dad gets back on his feet. But Dad never got back on his feet, and the amount never went down. It only went up. Inflation, medical bills, repairs, emergencies. $4,800. Every single month. It was enough to pay the mortgage on a beautiful house in a good school district. It was enough to start a college fund for Lark. It was enough to let me take 6 months off work to hold my baby instead of rushing back after 6 weeks. I had told myself I was a good daughter. I had told myself I was keeping them safe. But I wasn't keeping them safe. I was just keeping them comfortable. And in their comfort, they had decided that I was disposable. My hand shook as I opened my banking app. Face ID recognized me, even with the oxygen tube taped to my face. I navigated to the Scheduled Transfers tab. There it was. Family support. Monthly. $4,800. Next transfer. Tomorrow. My thumb hovered over the screen. A lifetime of conditioning screamed at me. They will lose the house. Dad will have a heart attack from the stress. You are selfish. You are ungrateful. You owe them. I looked at the empty space in my belly. I thought about my daughter, Lark, lying alone in a glass box, waiting for a grandmother who was too busy playing electronic slots to meet her. They didn't want me. They didn't want my child. They wanted my money. I was not a daughter to them. I was an ATM with a pulse. I tapped the line item, edit, delete recurring transfer. The app asked me to confirm. Are you sure you want to cancel this series? I thought about the text message. Do not go into labor this week. I am sure, I whispered to the empty room. I tapped A. Success. The recurring transfer has been canceled. I stared at the screen. I expected the roof to cave in. I expected the police to burst through the door. I expected my heart to stop, but nothing happened. The heart monitor kept beeping. The air conditioner kept humming. I breathed in. It hurt, but the air felt different. It felt lighter. I was not done. I went to the joint account my mother had guilted me into keeping for emergencies, the one where I deposited extra cash for her medical copays. Balance, $12,450. Transfer, to Paloma Personal Savings, amount $12,450. Confirm, success. I watched the balance hit zero. I put the phone down on the plastic table. My hand was trembling violently now, but my eyes were dry. My vision was crystal clear. I lay there for 3 hours, watching the sun begin to bleed gray light through the hospital blinds. I waited for the inevitable explosion. I knew it would come. When the money didn't hit their account at 9 in the morning, my phone would light up. They would find time for me then. They would rush to the hospital then, not to see if I was alive, but to see why the faucet had been turned off. But before the sun could fully rise, the door to my ICU room opened. It was not a nurse. It was not Elliot. An old man stood in the doorway. He was wearing a heavy wool coat that smelled of rain and pipe tobacco. He held a dripping wet umbrella in one hand and a thick, battered leather briefcase in the other. Grandpa Winston. He was 78 years old, a man who had spent 40 years in forensic accounting before retiring to a cabin 2 hours north. We spoke on holidays. He sent cards. He was distant, a hard man who didn't deal in emotions. He looked at me. He looked at the tubes. He looked at the monitors. His jaw tightened, the muscles working under his papery skin. He walked into the room, his cane tapping a steady rhythm on the linoleum floor. Tap, tap, tap. He didn't say a generic, "Are you okay?" or "I am sorry." He walked straight to the chair beside my bed, set the wet umbrella in the corner, and placed the heavy briefcase on his lap. He spun the combination lock. Click, click, click. The latches snapped open with a sound like a gunshot in the quiet room. "You canceled the transfers," he said. It wasn't a question. I stared at him. How could he possibly know I had done it 3 hours ago? I hadn't told a soul. I did. I whispered, "Good," he said. He reached into the briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents thick enough to choke a horse. They were not get-well cards. They were bank statements, loan applications, copies of emails, and right on top, a printout of a signature that looked exactly like mine. But I knew for a fact I had never signed. I drove down as soon as I heard the police scanner report a crash at the Riverton intersection involving a silver sedan. He said, "I knew it was your car. I called your father. He didn't answer. I called your mother. She told me she was busy." He looked me dead in the eye, his gaze sharp and terrifyingly intelligent. "They are not coming, Paloma. And frankly, you do not want them to come. Not after you see what is in this bag." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What is it?" He opened the first folder. "I have been watching them for 5 years," he said. "I have been building a file. I didn't want to intervene until I had concrete proof, and until I knew you were ready to see the truth without making excuses for them." He tapped the document with a manicured fingernail. "You think you were supporting their mortgage? You think you were paying for your father's medication?" He flipped the page. "Paloma, your parents paid off that house 7 years ago." The room spun. "What? They paid it off," he repeated, enunciating every word. The $4,800 you sent every month. It didn't go to the bank. It went here. He pointed to a routing number. That is a shell account, he said. And from there, it went to casinos in Atlantic City. It went to luxury car leases for your sister. It went to a timeshare in Florida that they told you they were renting from a friend. I couldn't breathe. The chest tube felt like a spear. But Dad, I stammered. He cries about the bills. He shows me the notices. Photoshop, Winston said. And bad Photoshop at that. If you had ever looked closely, really looked, you would have seen the fonts didn't match. But you didn't look, because you trusted them. He leaned forward. The look on his face was one of profound, terrifying protectiveness. That is just the theft. Paloma, that is the light stuff. What I found last week is why I'm here. This is why they didn't want you to survive this crash. He pulled out a document stamped with a legal seal. They took out a life insurance policy on you, he said. $2 million, without your knowledge. And do you know who the primary beneficiary is? I shook my head, tears finally spilling over. It is not Elliot, he said, and it is not your daughter. It is Delaney. He closed the file with a snap. You canceled the cash flow tonight. That is a start. But they are going to come through those doors the moment they realize the money stopped. And when they do, they are going to try to get you to sign a power of attorney over your insurance settlement from this accident. He placed his hand over mine. His skin was cool and dry. I am not going to let that happen. You are going to rest. You are going to heal. And I am going to sit right here in this chair. And when your parents walk in, they are not going to find a helpless daughter they can guilt into submission. They are going to find me. And I have brought enough evidence in this bag to send them to federal prison for 20 years. He sat back, crossing his legs, and settled in for the wait. Sleep, Paloma, he said. The war starts when they get here. To understand the silence in that hospital room, and the weight of the briefcase resting on my grandfather's knees. You have to understand who I was 10 years ago. You have to understand that a person does not wake up one morning and decide to hand over their entire financial future to a pack of wolves. It happens slowly. It happens in increments small enough to rationalize, until the water is boiling and you have forgotten how to jump out. I was 25 years old. I had just landed my first serious job as a junior analyst at Crownstead Risk and Compliance. It was a firm that specialized in detecting vulnerabilities in corporate structures, finding the cracks where money or data could leak out. The irony of my job title would not strike me until a decade later. I spent 50 hours a week identifying red flags for Fortune 500 companies, yet I could not see the neon warning signs flashing in my own kitchen. I remember the day the trap was set. It was a Tuesday in October. I had just received my first real paycheck, a direct deposit that made me feel like an adult, like a player in the American economy. I was sitting in my cubicle, staring at the number on the screen, feeling a swell of pride. I was the first person in my family to work in a corporate high-rise. I was the success story. Then my phone rang. It was my mother, Celia. She was crying. Not a soft weep, but a ragged, hyperventilating panic that made my stomach drop through the floor. It is the house. Paloma, she gasped. We are going to lose the house. I walked to the stairwell, my heart hammering. What are you talking about? I asked. Dad has a pension. You have the savings. It is gone, she said. All of it. The refinance rate adjusted. The balloon payment is due. The bank is going to foreclose. Paloma, they are going to put our furniture on the curb next month. Your father is talking about, she trailed off, letting the implication hang there, heavy and dark. He is talking about ending it. He says he cannot live with the shame. I was 25. I loved my parents. The thought of my father, a proud man who always wore a tie to Sunday dinner, being humiliated, being homeless, was physically painful to me. How much? I asked. We just need a bridge, she said, just to cover the difference until the modification goes through. $2,200 a month. $2,200. It was a huge chunk of my new salary. It meant I would be living in a studio apartment with drafty windows instead of the one-bedroom I had toured. It meant ramen instead of takeout. It meant no vacations. But it was my parents. It was the house where I grew up. Okay, I said. I will set it up. I will send it today. Thank you, baby. She wept. You are saving us. You are the only one who can save us. But Paloma, you have to promise me something. Anything. I said. You cannot tell your father you are sending this money. He has too much pride. If he knows he is living on his daughter's charity, it will kill him. Let him think he handled it. Let me manage the accounts. Please, I promised. I thought I was being noble. I thought I was protecting his dignity. I did not know I was signing a non-disclosure agreement for my own exploitation. That was how it started. A recurring transfer. $2,200. First of the month, every month, for the first year. I felt good about it. I felt like a provider. I would go home for holidays and see the heat turned on, the fridge full of food, and I would think, I did this. I would catch my father's eye across the table and feel a secret warmth, knowing I was the invisible pillar holding up his roof. But the bridge never ended. The modification never went through. A year later, the amount went up. It is the roof. Mom whispered over the phone. The contractor found black mold. If we do not fix it, the city will condemn the house. We need another $600, just for a few months. So the transfer became $2,800. Then it was my father's medication. The insurance stopped covering his statins. She told me, he is splitting pills. Paloma, he is dizzy all the time. I added $400. Then it was legal fees for a boundary dispute with the neighbor. Then it was the car transmission. Then it was a rise in property taxes. By the time I was 28, the monthly transfer was $3,500. By the time I was 30, it was $4,200. And by last year, it had settled at a fixed, non-negotiable $4,800 a month. I was making good money by then. I was a senior manager. My peers were buying vacation homes in the Catskills. They were driving Teslas. They were posting photos from Amalfi and Kyoto. I was driving a 7-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the rear bumper that I could not afford to fix. I was shopping at discount grocery stores, hunting for orange stickers on expiring meat. I was declining wedding invitations because I could not afford the flight and the hotel. I told myself this was the price of being a good daughter. I told myself that family was about sacrifice. But there were cracks in the story, little shards of glass that I kept stepping on, even as I tried to ignore them. The biggest shard was my sister, Delaney. Delaney was 5 years younger than me. She did not work. She described herself as a content creator, which mostly meant she posted photos of her latte art and her outfits. Yet, while I was eating frozen dinners to pay our parents' mortgage, Delaney was living a life that looked like a magazine spread. I remember one specific Tuesday. I was at my desk, eating a tuna sandwich I had made at home because I was trying to save $12 on lunch. I opened social media and there was Delaney. She was in Scottsdale, Arizona. She was wearing a white bikini that I knew cost $300. She was holding a bottle of champagne by a pool at a resort where the nightly rate was more than my car payment. The caption read, "Manifesting abundance." I felt a surge of bile in my throat. I called my mother. "How can Delaney afford a trip to Scottsdale?" I asked. "You told me you guys barely had money for groceries last week." "Oh, honey, don't be jealous," Mom said, her voice soothing and dismissive. "Delaney has friends. You know how she is. She is social. People invite her places. Some rich boyfriend probably paid for it." I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. Because the alternative that the money I was bleeding out of my veins every month was funding my sister's champagne habit was too horrible to contemplate. So I swallowed the lie. I told myself Delaney was just lucky. Then there was Elliot. I met Elliot when I was 29. He was an architect, pragmatic and kind, with a mind that worked in structural loads and foundations. He loved me, but he hated my blind spot. He never told me to stop paying. He knew it would break me to feel like I was abandoning them, but he started keeping track. He would sit at the kitchen table on Sunday mornings, watching me balance my checkbook, his jaw tight. "Paloma," he said once, gently, "I looked at the property tax records for your parents' county. The rate has not gone up in 3 years. Why did your mom say it increased by $200 a month? She said it was a special assessment. I said defensively, for the school district. He just nodded. But he wrote it down. He wrote everything down. One night, 3 years ago, I tried to push back. I was tired. I had just been passed over for a promotion because I could not take on an overseas assignment. I could not afford the upfront relocation costs because my savings were drained every month. I called my mother. Mom, I said, I need to see the paperwork. What paperwork? She asked, her voice sharpening instantly. The mortgage statements, the medical bills, the tax assessments. I am sending nearly $5,000 a month. I need to see where it is going. I need to know when this ends. There was a long silence on the other end, a silence that felt cold and dangerous. Do you not trust me? She asked. Her voice trembled. A masterclass in weaponized victimhood. After everything I have done for you, I wiped your bottom. I paid for your braces. I sat up with you when you were sick. And now you want to audit me like I am one of your clients. No, Mom. I said, I just want to understand. Your father has the papers, she snapped. He keeps them in his office. He is very private about it. If I ask him for them, he will know you are asking. Do you want him to have a heart attack? Do you want to kill your father? Paloma, is that what you want? The guilt washed over me, hot and suffocating. No, I whispered. Of course not. Then send the money, she said, and stop causing drama. I stopped asking. I surrendered my right to ask. I accepted the premise that my money was their property, and my curiosity was a violation, but the doubt never fully went away. It sat in my gut like a stone. 6 months ago, right before I got pregnant with Lark, Elliot came into the living room. He had his laptop open. Paloma, he said, look at this. I walked over. He had built a spreadsheet. It went back 10 years. Column A was the date. Column B was the amount. Column C was the reason my mother had given. It was a wall of numbers, a cascading waterfall of cash. Scroll to the bottom, Elliot said. I scrolled. At the very bottom, in a cell highlighted in red, was the sum total. $425,600. I stared at the number. The breath left my lungs. $425,000. That was a house. That was a retirement fund. That was a life. I had not just been helping, I had been strip-mined. I looked at Elliot. His eyes were sad. They are not struggling. Paloma, he said softly, nobody is this unlucky for this long. This is not a crisis. This is an income stream. I closed the laptop. I did not want to see it. I was pregnant. I wanted to focus on the baby. I wanted to believe that once the grandchild arrived, things would change. I wanted to believe that love would finally outweigh the transaction. I was a fool. I lay in that hospital bed. 10 years later, with my chest tube and my empty uterus, and I realized the truth. The reason they were not here was not because they did not care. It was because they were afraid. They knew that if I died, the money stopped. But they also knew that if I lived, and if I ever really looked at the ledger, the game was over. They had not been 18 minutes away at a charity gala. They had been 18 minutes away, spending the $4,800 I had sent them yesterday morning, and I had authorized it. I had clicked send, month after month, year after year. I looked at Grandpa Winston, sitting in the plastic chair with his briefcase. He knew. He had known for a long time, and he had waited until I was broken enough to listen. The cost of my obedience was not just $400,000. The cost was that I had financed my own abandonment. I had paid for the gas in the car that drove them away from my hospital room. The realization that I was pregnant did not arrive with a fanfare. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, in the quiet of our master bathroom, with a faint pink line that was barely visible against the white plastic of the test stick. I sat on the edge of the bathtub for 20 minutes. The tile was cold against my legs. I was holding my breath, waiting for the universe to snatch it back, to tell me it was a chemical error, a false positive. We had been trying for 3 years. 3 years of ovulation trackers, negative tests, and silent disappointments. When I walked into the kitchen and showed Elliot, he did not say a word. He dropped the coffee mug he was holding. It shattered on the floor, sending dark roast splashing across the cabinets. But he didn't even look at the mess. He pulled me into his chest and held me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. I felt his shoulders shaking. He was weeping. For the first few weeks, we lived in a bubble of terrified joy. We whispered about names. We looked at cribs we couldn't yet afford to buy. But as the morning sickness set in, a violent, all-day nausea that made staring at spreadsheets impossible, a different kind of clarity began to sharpen in my mind. It was a biological shift. The moment I felt that first flutter of life, the instinct to protect shifted from abstract to visceral. I looked at our bank account, and for the first time, I didn't see numbers. I saw resources. I saw diapers. I saw pediatrician copays. I saw a college fund that currently had $0 in it because every spare cent I earned was being funneled to a zip code 18 minutes away. I was bringing a child into the world. What was I going to teach her? That love is a transaction, that it is noble to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. I couldn't be a mother and a martyr at the same time. I decided to call my mother. I needed to set a boundary. I rehearsed the conversation in the car on the way to work. Mom, we are having a baby. We need to pause the transfers. It sounded reasonable. It sounded necessary. I dialed her number. Hello, she answered. She sounded distracted. The noise of a television blaring in the background. Mom, I said. I have news. Make it quick. Paloma, she said. I am watching my show. I am pregnant, I said. The silence on the other end lasted for 5 seconds. I counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Finally, she let out a short, sharp huff of air. Well, she said, it is about time. You finally managed to do something right. The joy I had been holding in my chest evaporated. Not congratulations. Not, I am so happy for you. Just a backhanded compliment that implied my entire life up to this point, my career, my marriage, my financial support had been a series of failures. We are really happy. Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady. But that is actually why I'm calling. We need to talk about the monthly transfer. The tone of the call changed instantly. The background noise of the television was muted. I could practically hear her posture stiffen. What about it? She asked. Her voice was ice. With the baby coming, our expenses are going to triple, I said. And my insurance has a high deductible. We need to save for the birth. I need to pause the $4,800 for 6 months, just until I go back to work after maternity leave. Pause, she repeated the word like it was a slur. You want to pause helping your family? It is not about helping. Mom, I said, it is about math. I cannot afford 2 households anymore. Paloma, she said, and her voice dropped into that low, trembling register she used when she wanted to destroy me. Do you have any idea what you owe us? Do you know what we sacrificed to raise you? We put food on your table. We put clothes on your back. And now, the moment you get a little bit of good news, you want to cut us off. You want to see your father on the street. I rubbed my temples. The stress headache was immediate. Nobody is going on the street. Mom, Dad has a pension. It is not enough, she snapped. Everything is going up. The price of eggs. The price of gas. You are being selfish. Paloma, you are thinking only of yourself. Suddenly, I heard a voice in the background. It was my father. Gordon. He sounded distant, like he was standing in the doorway. Celia, he said. His voice was weary. Celia, leave the girl alone. Let her breathe. If she needs the money for the baby, let her keep it. My heart leaped. For a second, I thought he was finally stepping up. Shut up. Gordon, my mother hissed away from the phone. Go back to the garage. You do not understand the finances. You want to lose the truck? Go. There was a sound of a door closing. He was gone. He had retreated. Just like he always did. Paloma, my mother said, returning to the phone. Listen to me. If you cut this money, the stress will kill your father. His heart is weak. Do you want that on your conscience while you are playing happy family with your new baby? I felt sick. Physically sick. Fine, I whispered. I felt small. I felt defeated. We will talk about it later. I did not pause the transfer. I was a coward. I let the $4,800 leave my account on the first of the month, just like always. But something had broken. Elliot saw it. He didn't say anything to me about the call, but he started digging. He stopped trusting the summaries I gave him. He started logging into my bank account directly. 2 months later, I was 6 months pregnant. My ankles were swollen, and I was exhausted all the time. I came home from work to find Elliot sitting at the kitchen table. He had 3 months of printed bank statements spread out in front of him. "Paloma, sit down," he said. I put my bag down. "What is it I have been tracking the routing numbers?" He said, "For the last 5 years. Your transfer went to a checking account at First National. That is the joint account your parents have had since you were a kid." "Right? Yes," I said. "Look at the last 3 months," he said. He pushed a paper toward me. I looked. The routing number was different. "It changed in February," Elliot said. "The money isn't going to First National anymore. It is going to 2 different places. 3,000 goes to an account under the name Riverton Gaming LLC, and the other 1,800 goes to a personal account." He pointed to the name on the transaction line. B.D. Services. I stared at the letters. B.D. Services. "Who is B.D.?" I asked. "I don't know," Elliot said, "but I looked up Riverton Gaming. It is the holding company for that new sports lounge on Route 9, the one with the electronic horse racing." I felt a cold chill ripple over my skin. "They are gambling it," Elliot said. "Not all of it, but a lot of it. And this BD person, I think that is a bookie, Paloma, or a loan shark. This isn't a mortgage payment. This is debt service for bad habits." I sat back, my hand resting on my stomach. The baby kicked, a hard thump against my ribs. "I need proof." I said, "I cannot accuse them without proof. Mom will just say it is a bill pay service or something. She will spin it. Ask for the receipts." Elliot said, "Tell her your accountant needs them for tax purposes. Do not ask. Demand." The next day, I texted my mother. I didn't call. I didn't want to hear her voice. "Mom, I need copies of the mortgage statement and the medical bills for the last quarter. My accountant says I might be able to claim some of this as a dependent care deduction. Send them by Friday." It was a lie, but it was a plausible one. Friday came and went. No response. On Saturday, I texted again. "Mom, the papers." She sent me 3 photos. They were blurry. They were taken in low light, at a weird angle. One was the corner of a water bill that showed a balance of $80. One was a pharmacy receipt for aspirin and bandages, totaling $12. And the third was a handwritten note on a napkin that just said loan repayment, $500 with no date and no signature. "That is all I can find." She texted, "Dad is very disorganized. It was an insult to my intelligence. It was a slap in the face. She wasn't even trying to make the lie convincing anymore. She knew I would accept the scraps because I was too afraid to flip the table. But then came the email. It was 3 weeks before my due date. I was huge, uncomfortable, and still working 50-hour weeks to cover the hole in our budget. I was clearing out my spam folder when a subject line caught my eye. Notice of default. Co-signer responsibility. My finger hovered over the delete button. It looked like phishing. It looked like spam. But something about the sender's domain name credencerecovery.com made me pause. That was a legitimate collection agency. I knew them from my work in risk compliance. I opened the email. "Dear Ms. Redfern, this is a formal notice regarding the delinquent status of the auto loan for the 2024 Range Rover Evoque, account ending in 4492. As the co-signer on this note, you are jointly and severally liable for the outstanding balance of $6,200 in arrears. Please contact us immediately to avoid further legal action." I stopped breathing. A Range Rover. My parents drove a 10-year-old Ford truck. I drove a Civic. Nobody in my family had a Range Rover, except Delaney. I remembered the Instagram post from Christmas. Delaney leaning against a white SUV, captioning it, "New whip, blessed." I had assumed it was a lease, or a boyfriend's car. I called the number in the email immediately. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. "This is Paloma Redfern," I said when the agent answered. "I received an email about a loan. I think you have the wrong person. I never signed for a Range Rover." The agent was polite but firm. "Can you verify your social security number?" I gave it to him. He typed for a moment. "Ms. Redfern, I have the digital loan agreement right here." It was signed electronically on November 14th. Your name, your social, and your email address are listed as the guarantor. The primary borrower is Delaney Redfern. "No," I said. My voice rose. "No. That is impossible. I did not sign that. I have a digital signature," the agent said. "It was authenticated from an IP address in Riverton, Pennsylvania." Riverton. My parents' house. I felt like the floor was dissolving. They had used my name. They had stolen my identity to buy my sister a luxury car while I was pregnant and begging for a break on my payments. I hung up the phone. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call Delaney. I was past the point of screaming. I was in a cold, quiet rage. I looked at the calendar. My due date was in 10 days. I made a decision. I would get through the birth. I would deliver my daughter safely. I would bring her home, and then, once I was physically recovered, I would go to their house with a lawyer, and I would burn their world to the ground. I would cut them off. I would press charges. I would do whatever I had to do, but I had to survive this week first. I told Elliot nothing about the email. I didn't want him to storm over there and cause a scene that might send my blood pressure spiking. I needed to keep the peace for just a little longer, just until the baby was here. That was the mistake. I thought I had time. It was a Thursday. It was raining a hard, relentless sheet of water that turned the Pennsylvania roads into mirrors. I had stayed late at the office to finish a compliance report because I needed the overtime pay to cover the impending collection on the car I didn't own. I clocked out at 7:30 in the evening. My back was aching. My feet were swollen inside my shoes. I got into my car and turned the key. I rubbed my belly. "Hey, Lark," I whispered. "We are almost home. Just hold on a little longer." I pulled out onto the highway. The visibility was poor. The wipers were slapping back and forth, a hypnotic rhythm. Swish, swish, swish. I was thinking about the $4,800. I was thinking about the Range Rover. I was thinking about my mother's voice saying, "You owe us." I didn't see the pickup truck running the red light at the intersection. I didn't see it until the headlights filled my entire world with blinding white. There was no time to brake. There was no time to scream. There was just the sound of glass shattering, the crunch of metal folding like paper, and the sudden, violent realization that my plan to wait was the worst decision of my life. The rain in Riverton that Thursday night was not just weather, it was a curtain. It fell in thick, heavy sheets that turned the world into a blur of gray and charcoal. I was driving down Route 30, the wipers of my Civic slapping frantically against the glass, fighting a losing battle against the deluge. It was 7:45 in the evening. I was exhausted. My lower back throbbed with the dull, persistent ache of the third trimester, and my ankles felt like they were swelling out of my boots. I had skipped dinner to finish the compliance report, and now my stomach was growling, a hollow reminder of my own neglect. I came to the intersection of Main and Elm. The light was red. I stopped. I waited. I watched the rain distort the glow of the traffic lights, turning them into long, bleeding streaks of color on the wet asphalt. Green. I took my foot off the brake. I accelerated slowly, careful of the slick road. I was halfway through the intersection when I saw it. It wasn't a sound at first. It was a flash of motion in my peripheral vision, a shape that was too big, moving too fast. I turned my head to the left. Twin headlights, blindingly bright, were rushing at me like the eyes of a predator. A black pickup truck. It was not slowing down. It was eating up the distance between us with terrifying speed. I did not have time to scream. I did not have time to turn the wheel. My brain registered only one thought: a single, crystal-clear plea that rang out in the silence of my mind. Please, not her. The impact was not a noise. It was a physical assault. The world disintegrated. Metal shrieked a high, tearing sound like a beast in pain. The side of my car folded inward, the glass shattered, exploding into a million diamonds that rained down on me. Then the airbag deployed. It hit me in the face and chest with the force of a sledgehammer, a hot, white punch that knocked the air from my lungs. My head snapped back. The smell of burning chemicals and ozone filled the cabin. Silence rushed back in, heavy and ringing. I was pinned. The steering wheel was crushed against my chest. I tried to inhale, but my ribs felt like they were made of broken glass. Every tiny sip of air was a jagged knife. My hand. I had to move my hand. I forced my left arm to move. It felt heavy, like it belonged to someone else. I reached down, fumbling blindly through the debris, until my palm found the curve of my stomach. It was hard. It was tight. I could not feel her moving. Lark, I tried to say, but only a bubble of blood came out of my lips. Sirens. I heard sirens. They sounded miles away, underwater. The world was going gray around the edges. A face appeared at my broken window. A firefighter. He was yelling something, but his voice was muffled. Ma'am, can you hear me? Ma'am? I looked at him. I tried to point to my belly. Baby. I mouthed. Baby. Then the gray turned to black. And I fell into the dark. I do not remember the ambulance. I do not remember the emergency room doors bursting open. I do not remember the doctor shouting that the fetal heart rate was crashing and that they had to cut immediately. I learned all of this later. I learned it from the timestamps on my medical records and the frantic, terrified voicemails Elliot left on my phone. While I was lying on an operating table, with a team of strangers slicing into my abdomen to pull my daughter from a dying body, Elliot was 500 miles away in Chicago. He was standing at Gate C-12 at O'Hare International Airport, staring at a board that said, "Cancelled" in angry red letters. The storm that had caused my accident had grounded the entire eastern seaboard. He was trapped. He told me later that he felt a physical snap in his chest when the hospital called him. A nurse told him I was in critical condition. She told him the baby was being delivered via emergency C-section at 34 weeks. She told him that because I was under general anesthesia and incapacitated. They needed a family member present to make decisions for the infant if complications arose. Elliot ran to the rental car counter. There were no cars. He ran to the ticket desk. No flights. He sat on the dirty airport carpet, surrounded by strangers eating pretzels and complaining about delays, and he dialed the only number he could think of. He called my mother. She lived 18 minutes from Riverton General Hospital. 18 minutes. She could be there before the doctors finished stitching me up. She could be the voice that welcomed Lark into the world. She answered on the fourth ring. Hello. Her voice was loud, competing with a chaotic background noise. Celia Elliott shouted into the phone. Celia, you have to go to the hospital. Now. What, Elliot? Why are you shouting? It is Paloma, Elliot said, his voice cracking. There was an accident. A car crash. Bad. They are doing an emergency C-section right now. I am stuck in Chicago. You need to get there. The baby is coming early. They need someone to sign for the NICU admission. There was a pause. In the background, Elliot heard a distinctive sound. It was a rising electronic scale ding 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 followed by a simulated cheer. It was the sound of a digital win. I can't, Celia said. What do you mean you can't? Elliot asked, unable to comprehend the words. We are at an event, Celia said. Her voice was tight, annoyed. We are at the shelter fundraiser. Gordon is here with me. We cannot just leave in the middle of it. Elliot stood up. He paced in a tight circle, his hand gripping the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. Celia, did you hear me? Paloma might be dying. Your granddaughter is being born prematurely. You are 18 minutes away. Get in the car. Lower your voice. Celia snapped. You are being hysterical. Paloma is fine. You know how she is. She probably just got a bumper scrape and panicked. She loves the drama. She loves to make people worry. Elliot stopped pacing. The background noise on the line grew louder. Another chime. A voice over a loudspeaker announcing a double bonus round. "You are not at a fundraiser," Elliot said. His voice dropped to a low, dangerous growl. "I hear the machines." "Celia, you are at the gaming lounge." "Excuse me," Celia said. Defensive now. "How dare you? I hear the slots." Elliot screamed, causing heads to turn at the gate. "I know where you are. You are gambling. Your daughter is in surgery and you are playing video slots. I am hanging up." Celia said coldly, "I will not be spoken to like this, and we cannot come. Gordon is too sensitive. You know he has high blood pressure. If he sees Paloma in a hospital bed with tubes, he will collapse. I have to protect him. We will come tomorrow when things are calm. Do not call us again tonight." The line went dead. Elliot stared at the phone. He felt like he had been punched. He looked at the time, 8:35. His daughter was being born right now, into a room full of strangers, and her grandmother had chosen a bonus round over holding her hand. He dialed my father. No answer. It went straight to voicemail. He dialed Delaney. She answered on the first ring, but she didn't say hello. She was laughing. "Hey, who is this?" "I am on a live stream," she said. "Say hi to the fans, Delaney." "It is Elliot," he said. "Put the phone down. Listen to me." "Ugh, Elliot. Why are you calling me? You are ruining the vibe." "Paloma was in a wreck," Elliot said, cutting through her nonsense. "She is in surgery. Mom won't go. You need to go. You need to go to the NICU and sit with the baby until I get there." Delaney let out a sigh that sounded like a tire deflating. "I can't do hospitals, Elliot," she said. "They smell gross. And honestly, I am not really a baby person. What am I supposed to do there? Just sit." "Yes," Elliot roared. "Just sit. Just be a human being. Look, I am busy," Delaney said. "I have a brand deal post going up in 20 minutes. I cannot just abandon my work. Mom said Paloma is fine anyway. She said you are just freaking out. Call me when the baby is cute and washed off." She hung up. Elliot sat there in the airport terminal. He was shaking. He was a man who believed in structure, in logic, in the fundamental decency of people, and in the span of 10 minutes, he had seen the absolute bottom of the barrel. He looked at his phone. He had one option left. He couldn't rely on blood. He had to rely on money. He opened his browser and searched for Private Nursing Agency Riverton. He called the first number that popped up. "I need a pediatric nurse," he told the dispatcher. "I need someone at Riverton General NICU immediately. I need them to stay with my daughter. I will pay double the hourly rate. I will pay triple. Just get someone there who will look at her and tell me she is okay. We have someone available." The dispatcher said, "Her name is Marin. She is excellent. She can be there in 20 minutes. Send her." Elliot said. Marin arrived at the NICU at 9:15. She was 40 years old, with kind eyes and hands that had held 1,000 fragile things. She wore sensible shoes and a badge that said, "Independent Care Provider." She found the incubator where Lark was sleeping. My daughter was tiny, a little bird lost in a tangle of wires and tubes. Her chest rose and fell in a rapid, shallow rhythm. Marin checked the monitors. She checked the IV lines. She took a photo with her secure phone and sent it to Elliot with a text. "She is beautiful. She is pink. She is fighting. I am here. I am not leaving." She sat down in the rocking chair next to the incubator. She pulled out her notebook to start her log. Patient infant girl Redfern. Mother Paloma Redfern. Marin stopped. She stared at the name on the chart. Paloma Redfern. She looked at the baby. Then she looked back at the paperwork. She remembered a name from 5 years ago, a case that had almost ruined her. She had been accused of billing fraud by a corrupt hospital administrator who was trying to cover his own tracks. She had been innocent, but she had no money for a lawyer. She was going to lose her license. She was going to lose everything. Then a forensic accountant had taken the case pro bono. An older man, stern, scary smart. He had dug through 5 years of hospital records, found the hidden ledger, and exonerated her completely. He had saved her career. His name was Winston Redfern. Marin reached into her bag and pulled out her personal phone. She scrolled through her contacts, looking for a number she had saved under the man who saved my life. She found it. It was an old landline number, but she hoped it still worked. She dialed. It rang 3 times. Redfern residence. A gruff voice answered. "Mr.?" Redfern Marin asked softly, keeping her voice low so she wouldn't disturb the sleeping babies. "This is Marin. You helped me with the Trinity Hospital case." "I remember you." "Marin," Winston said. His voice was sharp, alert. "Is everything all right?" "I am at Riverton General," Marin said. "I was hired privately to watch a baby in the NICU because the family could not make it. The mother was in a car accident. That is tragic." Winston said. "But why are you calling me because of the name?" Marin said. "The mother's name is Paloma Redfern, and looking at the intake forms, I think she is your granddaughter." There was a silence on the other end of the line, a silence so heavy it felt like the air pressure in the room dropped. Then, I heard the sound of a chair scraping against a wood floor. "Is she alive?" Winston asked. His voice was no longer the voice of a retired accountant. It was the voice of a general entering a war room. "She is critical, but stable." Marin said, "The baby is alone. The husband is stuck in Chicago." "The parents?" Marin hesitated. The husband said the parents refused to come. "Refused," Winston repeated. The word was a curse. "I am here with the baby," Marin said. "But someone needs to be here for Paloma. She is waking up soon. Keep the baby safe." "Marin," Winston said, "do not let anyone near that child unless they have a badge, especially if they say they are the grandmother." "I understand," Marin said. "I am leaving now." Winston said, "It will take me 2 hours to get down the mountain in this rain. But I am coming." And Marin, "Yes." "Sir." "Start a log." He said, "Write down everything. Every time they call. Every time they don't call. Every person who walks in that room. We are going to need it." "I am already writing," Marin said. She hung up the phone. She looked at Lark, sleeping under the warm glow of the heat lamp. She reached through the port and rested her finger gently on the baby's tiny hand. Lark's fingers curled around it, holding on with surprising strength. "You are not alone anymore, little one." Marin whispered, "The cavalry is coming." The silence in the ICU room after I pressed that digital button was not empty. It was heavy, like the air after a thunderstorm when the ozone lingers in your nose. I had just severed the financial artery that had connected me to my parents for a decade. I had expected to feel panic, a surge of daughterly guilt that I was abandoning them. Instead, I felt a strange, floating sensation. It was the feeling of a collar being unbuckled, for the first time in 10 years. My labor belonged to me. My future belonged to me. The invisible yoke I had worn since I was 25, the one that whispered "you owe us" with every paycheck, was gone. I looked at the phone in my hand. A message from Elliot popped up. I just spoke to her again. He wrote, "She asked if you were going to be discharged by Saturday. She said she does not want to drive down twice if she does not have to. She wants to wait until you are home so it is more convenient for her schedule." I stared at the words. Convenient. My daughter was fighting for her life in a plastic box down the hall. I was lying here with a tube in my chest, and my mother was calculating the gas mileage. It was the final confirmation. I didn't cry. The part of me that could cry for them had died in that intersection at Riverton. I looked up at Grandpa Winston. He was still sitting in the stiff plastic chair, his hands resting on the open briefcase. He had given me a moment to process the insurance policy revelation, but I could see in his eyes that he was not finished. He was pacing himself. He was building a case, brick by brick. "I am sorry, Paloma," he said. His voice was rough, cracking slightly at the edges. "Sorry for what I asked. You came. You are the only one who came. I am sorry I did not step in sooner." He said, "I saw the signs. I saw the way Celia looked at you at Christmas, like you were a resource, not a person. But I told myself it was not my place. I told myself that financial codependency is ugly, but it is not a crime." He paused. his fingers tracing the edge of a manila folder. "I was wrong," he said. "It is a crime." He pulled out the folder. It was labeled Exhibit C. "You told me you received a notice about a defaulted loan." He said, "For a Range Rover?" "Yes," I whispered, "but I never signed it. I swear." "Grandpa, I never touched a pen to that paper. I know." He said. He laid 2 pieces of paper side by side on the tray table over my bed. The first was the loan agreement for the vehicle. At the bottom, there was a signature. Paloma Redfern. It looked shaky. It looked rushed. But to an untrained eye, it looked like my name. The second paper was a forensic analysis report. It was covered in red lines and mathematical annotations. "I had a handwriting expert analyze this yesterday," Winston said. "He compared it to the birthday cards you have sent me over the years. Look at the pressure points." He pointed to the loop of the P and the cross of the F. "When you write, you use a heavy downstroke." He explained, "It is confident. It is fluid. This signature. It has micro tremors at the peaks of the letters. That happens when someone is drawing a signature, not writing it. They are copying a visual shape. They are hesitating because their muscle memory does not know the path." He looked at me. "But forgery is hard to prove in court if it is just one expert's opinion against a mother's word." He said, "Celia could claim you were tired. She could claim you signed it on a bad surface." He flipped the forensic report over. On the back was a screenshot of an email log. "This is what sends them to prison." "Paloma." I squinted at the paper. It was a transmission log from a digital scanner. It showed a date November 14th, time 2:30 in the afternoon. It showed the IP address of the sender and the recipient, the auto finance company. "Your mother told the bank that you signed this document digitally from your home computer," Winston said. "She claimed you were too busy to come to the dealership. So you executed the e-signature remotely." He tapped the IP address on the paper. "But digital footprints do not lie. This document was not uploaded from your house, and it was not uploaded from your parents' house." "Where did it come from?" I asked. "It was scanned and uploaded from a Canon Image Runner Advance machine located at 112 Market Street." He said. I frowned. That address sounded familiar. "That is the law office of Bartlett and Stone." Winston said. My stomach dropped. "Sarah Bartlett. She was my mother's best friend from high school. They played bridge together. They drank wine on Tuesdays. Your mother went to Sarah's office." Winston continued, his voice cold and precise. "She used Sarah's professional scanner to send the document because she thought it would look more official. She thought it would bypass the fraud filters if it came from a law firm's domain." He pulled out another sheet. It was an affidavit. "I called Sarah Bartlett this morning," Winston said. "I told her I was preparing a file for the district attorney regarding identity theft and wire fraud originating from her office equipment. I told her she could either be a witness or a co-conspirator." I gasped. "You threatened her. I gave her a choice," Winston corrected. "She chose wisely." Sarah confirmed that Celia came in on November 14th. Celia told Sarah that you had already signed the papers, but you didn't have a scanner at home. So she was doing you a favor. Sarah didn't look closely at the signature. She just let Celia use the machine. He stacked the papers neatly back into the folder. "We have the forged signature," Winston said. "We have the IP address tracing it to a location where you were not present, because I checked your work badge swipes, and you were in a meeting at Crownstead at exactly 2:30 that day, and we have a witness who places your mother at the scene of the transmission." He looked at me, and his expression softened, shifting from auditor to grandfather. "Paloma, this is not a family dispute. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a Class B felony. This is aggravated identity theft. And because they used the internet to transmit the fraudulent documents across state lines to the bank's server in Delaware, it is federal wire fraud." I closed my eyes. I felt a wave of nausea. "They are my parents," I whispered. "No," Winston said firmly. "They are predators." He leaned forward, his blue eyes locking onto mine. "You have to understand the distinction. Paloma, a parent makes mistakes. A parent might borrow money and be bad at paying it back. But a parent does not steal their child's identity, ruin their credit score, and jeopardize their career just to drive a luxury car they cannot afford. That is what a parasite does. He opened the final section of the briefcase. I mentioned the cosigner loan, he said, but there is one more thing, and this is the one that tells me they are not just desperate, they are malicious. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a bank statement for the account named Riverton Gaming LLC, the one Elliot had found. I subpoenaed this through a connection I have in the State Gaming Commission. Winston said, I wanted to see where the money was really going. He pointed to a withdrawal from 3 weeks ago, $5,000. I looked at the date. It was 2 days after I had told my mother I was pregnant. 2 days after I had begged her to let me pause the transfers so I could save for the baby. She took your transfer, Winston said. The money you needed for the crib. The money you needed for the hospital bills. She took it. She moved it to this account, and she didn't gamble it. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. She didn't gamble it, I asked. Then where did it go? Look at the payee, Winston said. I looked. Sapphire Seas Travel. She booked a cruise, Winston said. A 14-day Mediterranean cruise for her and your father, departing next month. I felt the air leave the room. A cruise, while I was terrified about paying for a NICU stay, while I was working overtime until my back screamed, while I was lying to myself that they needed the money for survival. She took your fear, Winston said quietly, and she turned it into a vacation. He closed the briefcase. The sound of the latches snapping shut was final. It was the sound of a door closing on my past life. You have a choice to make. Paloma, he said, the police are not involved yet. I wanted to show you this first. I wanted you to see it with your own eyes, so that when they walk through that door, and they will, the moment the bank notifies them that the recurring transfer failed, you do not waver. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray dawn breaking over the parking lot. You can let them explain, he said. You can let them cry. You can let them tell you that they deserve a break, that they intended to pay it back, that they love you. He turned back to face me. Or you can let me handle it. I looked at the briefcase. Inside that leather shell was the story of my life. Not the story I had told myself, the story of a good daughter helping a struggling family, but the true story. The story of a mark. The story of a victim. I thought about Lark. I thought about her tiny hand holding onto Marin's finger. If I let them get away with this, they would do it to her. They would consume me until there was nothing left for her. They would eat her inheritance, her college fund, her future. They would teach her that love is a debt that can never be paid. I looked at Winston. Handle it, I said. He nodded once, a short, sharp nod of respect. Rest now, he said. I need to make a phone call to the district attorney's office, just to get the paperwork started. By the time Celia gets here, I want the handcuffs to be invisible, but ready. He sat back down, took a book out of his coat pocket, and began to read. He looked like a sentinel. He looked like the only father figure I had ever really had, and for the first time since the headlights blinded me, I felt safe. The clock on the wall of my ICU room ticked past 10 in the morning. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the sky a bruised, mottled purple. Inside, the air was still, charged with the static electricity of Grandpa Winston's presence. He sat in the corner, his book open but his eyes alert, like a lion watching the tall grass. I heard them before I saw them. I heard the click-clack of heels on the linoleum, not the sensible rubber soles of nurses, but the sharp, authoritative staccato of designer pumps. Then I heard my mother's voice, loud enough to carry down the corridor. We are looking for room 312. Redfern. Yes, I am her mother. It is absolutely ridiculous that the parking garage is so far from the entrance. My husband has a bad knee. The door swung open. Celia Redfern did not look like a woman who had spent the night worrying about her daughter. She looked like she was arriving for a brunch reservation she was already 20 minutes late for. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere coat that I knew cost more than my first car, and her hair was perfectly blown out, stiff with hairspray. The scent of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, hit me instantly. masking the smell of antiseptic. It was a smell I associated with childhood anxiety, with the feeling of needing to be perfect so as not to disturb her mood. My father, Gordon, trailed behind her. He looked smaller than I remembered. His shoulders were hunched inside a windbreaker that had seen better days, and his eyes were rimmed with red. He was clutching a paper coffee cup like it was a life preserver. He didn't look at me. He looked at the floor, at the equipment, at his shoes, anywhere but my face. Paloma, Celia exclaimed. She swept into the room, stopping just short of the bed. She didn't touch me. She didn't reach for my hand. She stood there, surveying the tubes and the monitors with a look of mild distaste. Look at this mess, she said. I told you, Gordon. I told you she always ends up in situations like this. I stared at her. The pain in my chest was a dull throb, but the pain in my heart was sharp and sudden. Mom. I croaked. She looked at me then. Her eyes scanned my face, but there was no warmth in them. There was calculation. Well, you are awake, she said. That is good. We were so worried. She turned to place her purse on the tray table, right on top of my untouched breakfast. So, tell me, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. What is the situation with the other driver? Did the police say it was his fault? Because if it was his fault, the insurance payout should be substantial. Did you get his policy number? I felt the breath leave my lungs. I am in the ICU. Mom, I whispered. My lung collapsed. Your granddaughter is in an incubator, and you are asking about the insurance policy. Celia waved her hand dismissively. Don't be dramatic. Paloma, of course I care about the baby, but we have to be practical. These bills aren't going to pay themselves. And with your car totaled well, you are going to need a new vehicle, something safer, maybe an SUV. She paused, and a flicker of something greedy passed over her face, like a Range Rover. Maybe she suggested testing the waters. The audacity of it took my breath away. She was not just asking about money. She was trying to legitimize the fraud she had already committed. If she could get me to buy a Range Rover with insurance money, the loan she had forged in my name would disappear into the paperwork. It was brilliant. It was evil. That is enough. A deep voice rumbled from the corner. Celia spun around. She hadn't seen him. Winston had been sitting so still in the shadows that he had become part of the furniture. Dad. Celia gasped. Her hand flew to her throat. What are you doing here? I am doing the job you refused to do, Winston said. He didn't stand up. He didn't need to. His authority filled the room. I have been here since 4 a.m. Where were you? Celia. We were held up, Celia stammered. The storm, the roads were terrible, and Gordon wasn't feeling well. Gordon looked up then. He met his father's eyes, and I saw a flash of pure terror in them. He looked like a child caught stealing candy. Hello, Dad? Gordon mumbled. Winston ignored him. He kept his eyes locked on Celia. I heard about the charity event, Winston said. The animal shelter. Very noble. Celia relaxed slightly. She smoothed the front of her coat. Yes, well, we try to give back to the community. It went very late. That is why we couldn't come last night. We were obligated to the donors. Liar, Elliot said. My husband stepped out from the bathroom. He had been washing his face, trying to scrub away the airport grime. He stood by the head of my bed, his fists clenched at his sides. Elliot, Celia said, her voice turning icy. You look terrible. Have you slept? I know where you were, Elliot said. His voice was shaking with rage. I heard the machines. Celia, you were at the gaming lounge. You were playing slots while your daughter was being cut open. Celia's face flushed a patchy red. That is absurd. You were hysterical on the phone. You were hearing things. I wasn't hearing things. Elliot spat. And neither was the nurse I hired because you were too busy chasing a jackpot to sit with your own grandchild. Celia stiffened. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. You hired a nurse, she asked me, her tone accusatory. A stranger. With what money? Paloma. You are always complaining about being broke, yet you have money for private nurses. I looked at her, really looked at her. For 35 years, I had seen her as a victim of circumstance, a woman who tried her best but was just unlucky. Now, I saw her clearly. I saw the narcissism. I saw the cruelty. Elliot paid for it. I said, "Because you weren't there." "Well, we are here now," Celia said, brushing past the accusation like it was a piece of lint. "And we are here to help." In fact, she reached into her oversized designer bag. She pulled out a folder. It was blue, crisp. "Professional. I brought some paperwork," she said, her voice brightening into a sales pitch. "Since you are going to be incapacitated for a while, recovering and all that, you are not going to be able to handle the insurance adjusters. They are sharks. Paloma, they will try to cheat you." She opened the folder and pulled out a document. "I had Sarah draw this up this morning," she said. "It is a limited power of attorney. It just authorizes me to speak to the insurance company on your behalf, to handle the settlement checks, to make sure everything is deposited correctly." She held out a pen, a nice, expensive Mont Blanc pen. "Just sign right here at the bottom," she said. "I will handle the headache. You just focus on the baby." I looked at the paper. General power of attorney. It wasn't limited. It gave her full control over my finances. It gave her the right to cash checks, open accounts, and sign loans in my name. It was the key to the kingdom. If I signed this, she could take the insurance payout, which would likely be 6 figures, and it would vanish into the black hole of the Riverton Gaming Lounge before I even left the hospital. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my chest. It was a dark, hysterical thing. "You want me to sign that?" I asked. "It is for your own good," Celia said, pushing the pen closer. "You are on pain medication. You aren't thinking clearly. Let Mommy take care of it." I looked at Gordon. "Dad," I said, "do you think I should sign this?" Gordon flinched. He looked at Celia, then at me. He was sweating. "I don't know. Paloma," he stammered. "Your mother, she is good with numbers. She just wants to make sure we don't lose, that you don't lose out." He stopped. He had almost said it. "We don't lose, Dad," I said softly. "Did you know? Know what he whispered? Did you know I was sending $4,800 a month?" He went pale. He looked at Celia, terrified. She told me it was a few hundred," he mumbled, "for groceries. She said you wanted to help with groceries. 4,800. Gordon." Winston's voice cut in. "Every month. For 5 years. Before that, it was 3,000. Before that, 2,000. Gordon's mouth fell open. He looked at Celia. 4,000, Celia. You told me the pension was covering the mortgage. You told me you handled it." "I did handle it," Celia snapped. Turning on him, "I kept a roof over your head, didn't I? I kept you in your truck. I kept the lights on. Do you think your little pension covers the lifestyle we live? The lifestyle you live," Winston corrected. Winston stood up. He picked up his briefcase. He walked over to the bed and stood between Celia and me. He took the power of attorney document from Celia's hand. "Hey," Celia protested. "That is a legal document." Winston ripped it in half. Then he ripped it again. He let the pieces flutter to the floor like confetti. "The bank is closed." "Celia," he said, "what are you talking about?" Celia's voice was rising, shrill and panicked. "Dad, you are senile. Give me that back. Paloma needs to sign it." "Paloma isn't signing anything," Winston said. "And neither are you. Not anymore." He placed his briefcase on the tray table. He spun the lock. The click was loud in the room. "I know about the loan." "Celia," he said. Celia froze. Her face went from red to a ghostly white in a split second. "What loan?" she whispered. "The Range Rover." Winston said, "The one you forged Paloma's signature on. The one that is currently in default." "I don't know what you're talking about," Celia said, but her eyes were darting around the room, looking for an exit. That must be a mistake. Identity theft is rampant these days. Someone must have hacked her. "Stop," Winston said. "Just stop." He pulled out the forensic report. He pulled out the affidavit from Sarah Bartlett. He pulled out the email logs. "I have the scan logs from Sarah's office," he said. "I have her sworn statement that you were there on November 14th. I have the IP address tracing the upload to her machine. Celia stared at the papers. She looked like a trapped animal. You went to Sarah, she hissed. You turned my friend against me. I didn't have to turn her, Winston said. I just reminded her that prison is not a nice place for a middle-aged lawyer. She gave you up in 5 seconds. Celia. Celia turned to me. Her eyes were wild. Paloma, tell him to stop. This is ridiculous. I did that for you. I signed it because you were busy. I was trying to help you build credit by buying a $60,000 car for Delaney, I asked. My voice was surprisingly steady. By defaulting on the first payment. By letting a collection agency chase a pregnant woman, I was going to pay it, Celia screamed. I had a system. I was going to win it back. I just had a bad streak at the lounge. The machines are rigged. The room went silent. She had admitted it. Gordon made a sound. It was a low, wounded moan. He sank into the visitor's chair, putting his head in his hands. You gambled it, he whispered. You gambled it all. The house money, Paloma's money, the pension. Shut up, Gordon Celia yelled. You enjoyed the dinners, didn't you? You enjoyed the cable TV and the new tires. You didn't ask where it came from. You were happy to be ignorant. I looked at my mother. I didn't see a monster. I saw something pathetic. I saw an addict who had burned her own children to keep the fire going. Get out, I said. Celia looked at me. You can't be serious. I am your mother. Get out, I repeated. She sneered. Fine. Be ungrateful. After everything I sacrificed. But you listen to me. Paloma, you are going to regret this. You need me. Who is going to help you with the baby? Who is going to... I have help. I said, I have Elliot. I have Grandpa. I have a paid nurse. I don't need you. Celia grabbed her purse. She adjusted her coat with a sharp, angry jerk. Come on, Gordon, she barked. We are leaving. Gordon didn't move. I said, come on, Celia yelled. No, Gordon said. He lifted his head. His eyes were wet. I am staying, he said. I haven't seen my granddaughter yet. Celia stared at him. For the first time in her life, her command had failed. Her power had evaporated. Fine, she shrieked. Stay with the traitors. See if I care? She turned to storm out. One more thing. Celia, Winston called out. She stopped at the door, her hand on the handle. Don't bother checking the bank account. Winston said, the transfer was canceled at 3 this morning, and I have already contacted the bank regarding the co-signed loan. They have frozen the account. Celia turned around slowly. Her face was a mask of pure hatred. You think you are so smart, old man, she spat. You think you have me cornered? You don't know anything. I am a victim here. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Winston said calmly, and I suggest you use it, because I have forwarded a copy of this file to the district attorney. Celia laughed. It was a brittle, cracking sound. The DA. Please, they won't touch a family dispute. You are bluffing. Winston smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf who had already eaten the sheep. You think you are clever. Celia, he said softly. You think because you used Sarah's scanner, you were safe. But you forgot one thing. What she snapped. Modern copiers have hard drives. Winston said, they store an image of every single document they scan, even after you delete the email. I had a forensic tech pull the hard drive from Sarah's machine an hour ago. We have the original image, and we have the metadata. It shows your user login code that Sarah gave you. He tapped the folder. You left a digital fingerprint. Celia, and it is sitting on a server that I have legal access to. Celia's face crumbled. The arrogance vanished, replaced by a dawn of absolute horror. She looked at the briefcase. She looked at me. She looked at the door. Then, without another word, she turned and ran. We heard her heels clicking down the hallway, faster and faster, until the sound faded into the distance. The room was quiet again. Gordon was weeping silently into his hands. Elliot moved to the window, watching the parking lot. Winston sat back down. He opened his book. She won't get far, he said calmly. I looked at my father. He looked broken. Dad, I said. He looked up. I didn't know. Paloma. He sobbed. I swear to God. I thought we were just getting by. I know. Dad, I said, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't the whole truth. He had known, maybe not the details, maybe not the amounts, but he had known that the math didn't add up. He had chosen blindness because it was easier than confrontation, and that, in its own way, was a betrayal too. But for now, looking at his shaking shoulders, I didn't have the energy to hate him. I just felt tired. I closed my eyes. Is she gone? I asked. She is gone, Elliot said from the window. She just peeled out of the parking lot. Good, I whispered. Now, we could finally meet my daughter. It had been 6 weeks since the accident, and 4 weeks since we brought Lark home from the NICU. My chest was still healing. A dull, persistent ache behind my sternum that flared up when it rained. But the bruises had faded to yellow, and the stitches were gone. The house was clean. Not lived in clean, but staged clean. I had spent the morning arranging flowers I didn't care about and setting out finger foods I had no appetite for. We called it a sip and see, a very southern, very traditional way to introduce a baby to the world without passing her around like a football. But in reality, it was not a party. It was a courtroom, disguised as a suburban gathering. I had agreed to give my mother one last chance. She had called me every day for 2 weeks, leaving voicemails that ranged from weeping apologies to aggressive guilt-tripping about grandmother's rights. She claimed the scene at the hospital was a misunderstanding caused by stress. She claimed the gambling accusations were exaggerated. She claimed she just wanted to hold her granddaughter. Grandpa Winston had advised against it initially, but then he saw the strategic value. Let her come, he had said, sitting in my living room with his eternal cup of black coffee. But do not let her come alone. Invite witnesses. Invite people who cannot be charmed, bought, or guilted. If she acts out, let her do it in front of a jury. So I curated the guest list with the precision of a sniper. I invited Juliet, my director at Crownstead Risk and Compliance. Juliet was a woman who could spot a liar from 50 paces and had fired people for less than a fudged expense report. I invited Marcus, an old college friend who was now an investigative journalist. He had zero patience for sob stories. And I invited Mr. Abernathy, Winston's personal attorney, a man who wore 3-piece suits on Saturdays and spoke in complete, grammatically perfect paragraphs. At 2 p.m, the guests arrived. They cooed over Lark, who was sleeping in her bassinet in the center of the living room. Wearing a white onesie that cost $12, the atmosphere was warm, guarded, but polite. Then, at 2:45, the front door swung open without a knock. Celia Redfern made her entrance. She was 45 minutes late, a power move she had perfected when I was a teenager. She was wearing a floral dress that was slightly too young for her and too formal for a casual afternoon, and she was carrying a gift bag the size of a suitcase. Trailing behind her was Delaney. I hadn't invited Delaney. My sister walked in with her phone already raised, the ring light attachment glowing like a halo. She was recording. "Hey guys," she chirped to her imaginary audience. "We are finally here meeting my niece. Look at this spread. So cute." She panned the phone around the room, capturing Juliet eating a deviled egg and Mr. Abernathy looking unamused. "Mom," I said, stepping forward. "I didn't think Delaney was coming." "Oh, stop it," Celia said, breezing past me to deposit the giant bag on the table. "She is the aunt. You cannot exclude family. Paloma, that is petty. Besides, she drove me. My car is in the shop. She meant the truck was likely repossessed. Or they couldn't afford gas. I didn't ask." Celia made a beeline for the bassinet. She leaned over, her gold jewelry clanking. "Oh, look at her," she cooed, her voice pitching up an octave. "Grandma's little angel. She looks just like me. Doesn't she? Look at those eyes." Lark was asleep. Her eyes were closed. Celia looked around the room, assessing the audience. She flashed a bright, practiced smile at Juliet. "Hi, I am Celia, the grandmother. I see you are admiring the house. We are so proud of Paloma. Of course, we helped her with the down payment. You know, family supports family." I saw Julianne's eyebrow twitch. She knew for a fact I had saved the down payment myself by working 60-hour weeks for 3 years, but she didn't say anything. She just took a sip of her iced tea and watched. For the first hour, Celia played the role perfectly. She was charming. She was attentive. She told funny, slightly self-deprecating stories about raising me. She avoided Winston, who was sitting in the armchair by the window, reading a newspaper as if he wasn't there. But I knew the pivot was coming. A shark has to swim, and a grifter has to grift. It started with small comments, little probes sent out to test the defenses. "This neighborhood is getting expensive," she said to Marcus. "Property taxes must be murder. I worry about how young couples manage these days, especially with medical bills." Then she cornered Elliot near the kitchen island. "So, the insurance adjuster called me by mistake." She lied effortlessly. "He mentioned the policy limits on the other driver were quite high. Have you guys thought about how to structure that? You don't want it just sitting in a checking account getting taxed." Elliot, to his credit, just smiled a tight, dangerous smile. "We have it handled." Celia, "Thanks. I needed a break." I walked into the mudroom adjacent to the kitchen to grab more napkins. The door to the back patio was cracked open slightly. I heard a voice. It was Delaney. She wasn't filming anymore. Her voice was low, urgent, and devoid of the bubbly influencer persona. "I am trying." "Okay," she was hissing into the phone. "We are at the house now. Mom is working on it. She says she can get Paloma to sign the new POA if she gets her a loan. She thinks Paloma is still on painkillers." Pause. "No. Do not tow it yet." Delaney's voice cracked. "Listen to me. We are getting a check today. I swear. Just give us 24 hours. If you tow the Range Rover, my engagement goes down. I need that car for the collab. Just wait." I stood frozen in the mudroom. They hadn't come to see Lark. They hadn't come to apologize. They had come because the repo man was idling around the corner, waiting for the Range Rover that I was technically fraudulently responsible for. They were still trying to get me to sign a power of attorney. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was the same Paloma who had spent a decade buying their love. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. I wasn't angry. I was done. I walked back into the living room. The room was buzzing with low conversation. In the corner, near the television, we had set up a small karaoke machine. It was a joke gift from Elliot's brother, but we had used it earlier to make a few announcements. The microphone was sitting on the coffee table, switched on, connected to the Bluetooth speaker system that ran through the entire ground floor. Celia didn't notice it. She was too busy focusing on her target. She had finally cornered Winston. She had maneuvered him into the alcove by the bookshelf, just a few feet away from the coffee table. She thought they were having a private conversation. She didn't realize that the sensitive microphone was picking up every whisper and broadcasting it softly but clearly through the ceiling speakers. "Dad, listen to me." I heard Celia's voice drift from the speakers. The room didn't go silent immediately. People were still chatting. But then, the tone of her voice cut through. "You have to change the will, Dad." Conversations stopped, one by one. Heads turned. Julianne lowered her glass. Marcus stopped mid-sentence. Celia didn't notice. She was staring intently at Winston, her back to the room. "Paloma doesn't need your money," Celia hissed. The amplification made her whisper sound like a stage play soliloquy. "Look at this house. Look at her job. She has Elliot. She is fine. She is selfish. Dad, she cut us off right when we needed her most." Winston didn't say a word. He just looked at her. "Delaney is the one who needs help." Celia continued, her voice growing more desperate. "She is fragile. She has potential. But she needs a safety net. You need to rewrite the trust. Cut Paloma out. Give her share to Delaney. It is only fair. Paloma has already taken so much from us. Taken so much." The words hung in the air, magnified by the speakers. Mr. Abernathy, the lawyer, cleared his throat. It was a loud, deliberate sound. "Mrs. Redfern," he said, his voice projecting across the room. "Are you aware that you are speaking into a live microphone?" Celia spun around. She looked at the microphone on the table. She looked at the speakers in the ceiling. Then she looked at the 20 people staring at her with expressions ranging from horror to pity. The silence was absolute. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Julianne was the one who broke it. She set her glass down on the coaster with a sharp clack. "So," Julianne said, her voice dry and cutting, "did you come here to see your granddaughter?" Celia. "Or did you come to rob her mother?" Celia's face flushed a deep, ugly purple. We were discussing family business," she stammered. "It is private. You people wouldn't understand." I stood up. I was sitting on the sofa, holding Lark. I handed the baby to Elliot. He took her. His eyes locked on mine, nodding. "Go." I stood up and walked to the center of the room. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt incredibly tall. "It isn't private, Mom," I said. "Paloma," Celia warned, her eyes darting around the room. "Don't do this. Don't air our dirty laundry. These people don't care about you. They care about the truth," I said. I picked up a piece of paper from the side table. It was the summary sheet Winston had prepared. "You said I took from you." I said, "Let's talk about what I took." I read from the paper. My voice was calm, factual. It was the voice I used when presenting a risk assessment to a board of directors. Between October 2015 and January 2026, I transferred a total of $425,600 to your accounts. The room gasped. I heard someone whisper, "Oh my God." I was told this was for a mortgage that was already paid off. I continued. I was told it was for medical bills that didn't exist. I was told it was for property taxes that never increased. I looked at Delaney, who was shrinking into the corner, trying to make herself invisible. "I took out a loan, no. You forged my signature on a loan for $62,000 for a Range Rover because Delaney wanted to look rich on the internet. And right now, outside, you are terrified because you haven't made a single payment, and the repo man is coming." "That is a lie," Delaney shrieked. "It was a gift. You said you would co-sign." I turned back to Celia. "And when I was in a car accident," I said, looking her dead in the eye, "when I was bleeding internally and my daughter was being cut out of my body, Elliot called you. You were 18 minutes away." Celia flinched physically, as if I had slapped her. "You didn't come." I said, "You didn't come because you were at the Riverton Gaming Lounge, playing the slot machines with the money I had sent you for Dad's heart medication." "Paloma, please," Celia whispered. She looked small now. The Grand Dame act had disintegrated. "Everyone is staring. Let them stare," I said. I took a step closer to her. "You came here today not to see Lark. You came because you thought I was weak. You thought I was still the daughter who would set herself on fire to keep you warm. You thought you could trick me into signing a power of attorney so you could steal the insurance settlement." I pointed to the door. "That daughter died in the crash. Mom, she didn't make it." Celia looked around the room. She looked for an ally. She looked at Gordon, but he wasn't there. He had stayed home, finally refusing to be part of the charade. She looked at Winston, but he was looking at her with the cold detachment of a judge passing a sentence. She looked at the guests, but all she saw were walls of judgment. "You are ungrateful," she spat. Her voice was shaking, but she tried to muster one last scrap of venom. "After everything I did, I gave you life, and you almost took it back," I said. I walked over to the door and opened it wide. The afternoon sun streamed in, bright and unforgiving. "Leave," I said, "and don't come back. If you step foot on this property again, Mr. Abernathy has the restraining order ready to file." Celia stood there for a moment, vibrating with rage and humiliation. She looked at the microphone. She looked at the baby. Then she grabbed Delaney by the arm. "Come on," she hissed. "These people are sick." She marched out the door, dragging my sister behind her. Delaney looked back once, her eyes wide with panic, presumably thinking about her car. I slammed the door shut. I locked the deadbolt. Click. I turned back to the room. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. "I am sorry about the scene." I said to my guests, "The cheese is really good. Please, eat." For a second, nobody moved. Then, Julianne stood up and started clapping. Just a slow, steady applause. Marcus joined in. Then Mr. Abernathy. It wasn't a celebration of drama. It was a celebration of survival. I walked back to the sofa and took my daughter back into my arms. She was still sleeping, oblivious to the fact that her mother had just fought off a wolf to keep her safe. I looked at Winston. He tipped his coffee cup at me. "Well done," he mouthed. I took a deep breath. The air in the house felt different. It felt lighter. It felt like mine. The war did not start with a bang. It started with a notification on my phone at 3 a.m. I was up feeding Lark. The blue light of the nursery monitor the only illumination in the room. I opened social media, a habit I was trying to break, and there it was. My mother had not gone quietly into the night. She had gone online. She had posted a photo of an old, withered tree standing alone in a field. The caption was vague enough to avoid a libel lawsuit, but specific enough to act as a dog whistle for every relative we had. "Sharp is the sting of a thankless child." She wrote, "You give them your blood, your sweat, your youth, and when you stumble, they do not offer a hand. They lock the door." Praying for peace in this season of betrayal. I scrolled through the comments. They were a firing squad. "So sorry you are going through this." Celia. My Aunt Linda wrote, "Some people forget where they came from." Ungrateful. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 5 years commented, "Karma never misses." I felt a hot flush of shame prickle my neck. It was a masterclass in narrative control. She wasn't telling them what happened. She wasn't mentioning the gambling, the forgery, or the abandoned NICU baby. She was painting a picture of an elderly martyr cast out by a heartless, affluent daughter. Then came Delaney. My sister didn't do subtle. She posted a video titled, "Storytime Being Cut Off When You Need Family Most." She sat on her bed, wearing no makeup, a calculated choice to look vulnerable, and wiped away imaginary tears. "I don't want to go into details," she whispered to the camera, "but imagine being promised help with a car so you can get to work, and then having the rug pulled out because of jealousy. Imagine being told you aren't welcome to meet your own niece. It is just really toxic." You guys. The comments were flooded with heart emojis and angry faces. Cut them off. "Babe," a stranger wrote, "you deserve better." But there were cracks. One person commented, "Wait, didn't you just post about a trip to Scottsdale if you are broke? How did you afford that?" Delaney had deleted the comment within 3 minutes. I put the phone down. I looked at Lark. I realized that my mother and sister were not just angry. They were launching a PR campaign to bury the truth before it could bury them. But the internet was just noise. The real damage arrived in the mail 2 days later. It was a letter from Credence Recovery Services. Final notice. The header screamed in red ink. Regarding the delinquent account for the 2024 Range Rover Evoque, I opened my banking app to check my credit score. It had been 780 before the accident, a pristine, hard-earned number that I had protected like a fragile antique. It was now 640. I stared at the number. In the span of a month, I had lost 140 points. I was no longer a prime borrower. I was a risk. If Elliot and I wanted to refinance our house, we would be denied. If I applied for a clearance upgrade at work, this would be a red flag. My mother hadn't just hurt my feelings. She had taken a sledgehammer to my financial identity. Elliot walked into the kitchen. He saw the letter. He saw my face. "That is it," he said. His voice was hard, lacking any of his usual patience. "I am calling the police. Paloma. Today. We are filing the report for identity theft. We are pressing charges." I looked at him. I looked at the letter. "Elliot," I said, "if we file a police report, it becomes a criminal investigation." "Good," he said. "If she is convicted of federal wire fraud and identity theft over a certain dollar amount, she will go to prison." "Elliot, not jail. Prison." He slammed his hand on the counter. The sound made me jump. "She belongs in prison," he shouted. "Paloma, look at what she did. She tried to steal the insurance money while you were bleeding. She ruined your credit. She abandoned your child. Why are you protecting her? I am not protecting her, I yelled back. I am protecting myself. Do you think I want to be the woman who sent her mother to a cell? Do you think I want to carry that for the rest of my life? I sat down at the table, burying my face in my hands. The conflict was tearing me apart. I hated her. I hated what she had done, but the idea of seeing my mother in handcuffs, of visiting her through glass, it felt like a violation of nature. It felt like a sin, even if she deserved it. Winston was sitting on the porch. He had heard everything. He opened the screen door and walked in. He didn't shout. He didn't lecture. He just poured me a glass of water and set it down. You are looking at this as a binary choice. Paloma, he said, you think the options are total silence or total destruction, aren't they? I asked. The law is black and white. Grandpa, the law is a tool, he said. It is a lever. You don't have to use it to crush her skull. You can use it to build a wall. What do you mean, you want justice? He said. But mostly, you want safety. You want her to stop. You want the debt off your name. You want her away from Lark. Yes, I said. That is all I want. Then we don't need to send her to prison today. Winston said, we need to get her to confess. If we get a confession or recorded, legally binding admission that she forged the signature, we can take that to the bank. The bank will absolve you of the debt to avoid a lawsuit. Your credit will be restored. And Mom, I asked, once the bank knows it was fraud, they will decide whether to prosecute. Winston said, that burden will be on them. Not you. But knowing Celia, she will find a way to make a deal. She always does. But you will be free. I nodded slowly. It was a middle path. It was justice without the guillotine. But before we could make a move, my phone rang. It wasn't my mother. It was my father. Paloma, he whispered, can you meet me alone? I met him at a diner on the edge of town. 3 towns over from Riverton, so no one would see us. It was raining again. A cold drizzle that made the windows fog up. Gordon looked terrible. He had lost weight. His clothes hung off him like they belonged to a larger man. He was drinking coffee with a shaking hand. Thank you for coming, he said. I sat down. I didn't order anything. Why are you here? Dad, I asked. Is she sending you to negotiate? No, he said quickly. No, she doesn't know I'm here. She is spiraling. Paloma. She is on the phone with lawyers all day, trying to find someone who will sue you for defamation. She is talking about selling the furniture to pay the retainer. Let her, I said coldly. I didn't come to defend her. Gordon said, I came to tell you why. He looked down at his coffee cup. You think it is just the gambling, he said. You think she just likes the lights and the noise. Isn't it? I asked. Winston tracked the money to the lounge. That is where the money goes. Yes, Gordon said. But that is not the addiction. The addiction is the winning. He looked up at me, his eyes wet. Celia grew up poor. Paloma, you know that. She scrubbed floors. She swore she would never be the one taking orders again. When she plays those machines, or when she moves money around, or when she convinces you to pay a bill that isn't real, she feels smart. She feels like she is beating the system. He paused. It gives her a high. He said, controlling you gave her a high. Every time you sent a check, it wasn't just money to her. It was proof that she owned you, proof that she was powerful. I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't desperation, it was domination. Gordon reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small, metal box. It looked like a lockbox for jewelry. She keeps this in the back of her closet, he said. I stole it this morning while she was in the shower. He opened the box. Inside, there were index cards, dozens of them. I picked one up. My hand froze. It was a card with my name on it. Taped to the card was a cutout of my signature from my high school yearbook. Below it, practiced over and over in blue ink, were attempts to copy it. Paloma Redfern, Paloma Redfern, Paloma Redfern. There were cards for Gordon, cards for Delaney, even a card for Winston. She practices, Gordon whispered. She has been practicing for years. She calls it her insurance policy. She said that as long as she could write our names, she could never really be broke. I stared at the card. This wasn't impulsive. This was premeditated. This was a predator keeping a weapon in her closet. "There is one more thing," Gordon said. He looked terrified to say it. "What I asked." My voice was a whisper. "The money you sent last year," he said. "The big transfers. The ones she said were for the foundation repair and the roof." "Yes. We never fixed the roof." Gordon said. "Where did it go?" "Dad." Gordon took a breath. "It went to a landlord in the city," he said. "It was the security deposit and 6 months of prepaid rent for a penthouse apartment." I blinked. "A penthouse. For Delaney," Gordon said. "Delaney told her she needed a content house to launch her career. She said she couldn't become an influencer living in our spare bedroom. So Celia took your money, the money you worked for, and she set Delaney up in an apartment that costs $4,000 a month." I felt the blood drain from my face. I was eating ramen. I was driving a broken car. I was delaying my pregnancy. And I was paying for Delaney's bachelor pad. I stood up. The diner spun around me. "I have to go," I said. "Paloma?" "Wait," Gordon pleaded. "What are you going to do?" I looked at him. I saw a weak man who had let a monster eat his children because he was too afraid to fight. "I am going to finish it." "Dad," I said. I walked out into the rain. I got into my car and called Winston. "Grandpa," I said. "I am here." He answered. "You were right." I said, "We don't need a trial. We need a trap." I told him about the signature cards. I told him about the apartment. "I have an idea." I said, "She wants the insurance money. She is desperate for it because the repo man is coming and Delaney is about to lose her apartment." "Yes," Winston said. "She is cornered. So let's open a door." I said, "Let's give her exactly what she wants. Let's invite her to a meeting. Tell her I'm ready to settle. Tell her I am ready to sign the power of attorney." "Paloma, are you sure?" Winston asked. "I am sure," I said. "But we are going to do it at Mr. Abernathy's office, and we are going to have a stenographer, and we are going to have a very specific document waiting for her." I gripped the steering wheel. "She thinks she is smarter than everyone," I said. "She thinks she can copy my name and own my life. Let's see if she reads the fine print before she signs her own death warrant." "Set it up," Winston said. I hung up. I looked at the gray sky. They wanted a story, I would give them a story. But this time, I was holding the pen. The meeting was set for 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. We chose the conference room at Mr. Abernathy's law firm because it was neutral ground, or at least. That is what I told my mother. In reality, it was a soundstage. Every angle of the room was covered by security cameras that recorded both video and high-fidelity audio. The mahogany table was polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the faces of the people sitting around it like a dark pool of water. I arrived 15 minutes early. I sat in the chair facing the door. My hands folded in my lap. I was wearing a soft gray sweater and no makeup. I wanted to look tired. I wanted to look beaten. I needed to look like a woman who had been crushed by the weight of new motherhood and physical trauma. A woman looking for a savior. Mr. Abernathy sat next to me. He was the picture of legal neutrality, shuffling papers that meant absolutely nothing. Grandpa Winston was not in the room. His presence would have put Celia on guard. He was watching from the security office down the hall, alongside a forensic notary public. At 2:00 exactly, the receptionist opened the door. "Mrs. Redfern and Miss Redfern are here," she announced. Celia walked in first. She had toned down her appearance since the disastrous baby shower. She was wearing a modest navy suit and low heels. She looked like a grieving mother, a misunderstood matriarch. It was a costume, just like mine. Delaney followed her, clutching a designer handbag that I knew she hadn't paid for. She looked nervous, her eyes darting around the room, checking for cameras, checking for traps. She didn't see the ones that mattered. "Paloma," Celia said, her voice dripping with cautious honey. "You look rested. I look like a wreck." "Mom," I said, keeping my voice low and trembling. "I haven't slept in 3 days. Lark has colic. The pain in my chest comes back at night. I can't think straight." Celia's eyes lit up. This was the opening she had been waiting for. The weakness. "Oh, honey," she cooed. sitting down opposite me. I told you, it is too much for one person. You need family. You need support. That is why I called. I said. I took a deep, shaky breath. The insurance adjuster called me yesterday. From the accident. Celia froze. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. She just leaned forward, her predatory instincts overriding her act for a split second. And she asked, "They are finalizing the settlement." I lied. "It is a lot." "Mom, the other driver had a commercial policy. They are talking about a payout of $450,000 for pain and suffering and medical costs." I saw Delaney kick Celia under the table. $450,000. It was enough to pay off the Range Rover. It was enough to cover the gambling debts. It was enough to rent the penthouse for another 5 years. I saw the hunger move behind my mother's eyes like a shark fin cutting through water. "That is wonderful news. Paloma," Celia said, forcing her voice to remain calm. "It is what you deserve. I can't deal with it," I said, rubbing my temples. The paperwork, the calls, the bank transfers. "Mr. Abernathy says I need to set up a trust, or an escrow. I don't even know what those words mean right now. I just want to hold my baby. I want this to be over." I looked up at her, making my eyes wide and pleading. "You were right. Mom, I should have signed the power of attorney. You are good with money. You always handled the finances. I want you to handle this." The tension in the room snapped. Celia let out a long breath, a sigh of pure, unadulterated relief. She smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuine, because she genuinely believed she had won. "Of course, baby," she said. "I will take care of everything. I will make sure the money is safe. You won't have to lift a finger." Delaney reached into her bag and pulled out a document. It was crinkled at the edges. "We brought the form," Delaney said eagerly. "The one from the other day. You just need to sign it. Mr. Abernathy cleared his throat. He placed a hand on the paper Delaney was sliding across the table. "I am afraid we cannot use that document," he said smoothly. "Since this involves a settlement from a commercial insurance carrier, we need to use the firm's specific power of attorney form. It acts as a bridge between the insurance company and the designated agent." He opened a leather folder and slid a single sheet of crisp, white paper toward Celia. "This grants you full authority over the funds," Mr. Abernathy explained. "However, because we need to verify your identity as a financial guarantor. There is a standard clause at the bottom." Celia didn't read the clause. She was looking at the signature line. She was looking at the finish line. "What clause?" she asked, dismissively. "It simply states that by accepting this agency, you affirm that you have no outstanding claims of fraud against the principal that is Paloma, and that any previous financial associations, including co-signed loans or joint accounts, are valid and authorized by you." It was a word salad designed to sound boring, but it was a bear trap. If she signed it, or if she forced me to sign it under these terms, she was legally acknowledging the validity of the previous financial associations. She was validating the Range Rover loan. "Fine, fine," Celia said, waving her hand. "Where does she sign, Mr.?" Abernathy handed me a pen. It was a heavy black fountain pen. "Right there," he said, pointing to the line. I took the pen. My hand started to shake. I wasn't acting this time. The adrenaline was coursing through my veins so hard I thought I would vibrate out of the chair. This was the moment. I put the tip of the pen to the paper. I made a jagged line. "I can't," I whispered. "My hand is cramping. It is the nerve damage from the airbag." Celia watched the ink blot on the page. She was losing patience. The money was inches away, and my physical incompetence was slowing her down. "Just steady your hand." "Paloma," she snapped. "Take a breath." I tried again. The pen skittered across the page, making an illegible scrawl. "I can't do it," I sobbed, dropping the pen. "It hurts." Celia stood up. She walked around the table. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and stale coffee. She loomed over me, her shadow falling across the document. "Pick up the pen." "Paloma?" she ordered. I picked it up. "Here, let me help you," she said. She grabbed my hand. Her fingers were cold and hard. She wrapped her hand around mine. trapping my fingers against the barrel of the pen. "You are making it too complicated." She hissed in my ear. "Just do the loop. Like this." She forced my hand down. She began to drive the pen. But she didn't write my natural signature. My natural signature, the one I had used for 10 years on my driver's license and my real bank accounts, had a sharp, angular P and a flat F. Celia didn't do that. She moved my hand in a wide, sweeping arc. She made the P bulbous and round. She crossed the F with a high, flying loop. It was the exact signature from the Range Rover loan. It was the signature she had practiced on the index cards in her closet. I let her do it. I let her guide my hand through the entire name. Paloma Redfern. "There," she said, pulling back and admiring the forgery she had just executed using my own hand as the tool. "See, that wasn't so hard. Mr. Abernathy leaned forward. He looked at the signature, then he looked at Celia. "That is an interesting technique, Mrs. Redfern," he said. "What is?" Celia asked, reaching for the document. "You seem to know exactly how Paloma signs her name," he said. "Even better than she does right now. That specific loop on the P, it is very distinctive." Celia froze. Her hand hovered over the paper. "It is a family trait," she said defensively. "We all write alike." "Really, Mr. Abernathy asked. "Because I have Paloma's signature from her engagement contract here in the file. It looks nothing like what you just forced her to write." "But do you know what this new signature does look like?" He pulled a transparency sheet out of his folder. He laid it over the document Celia had just signed with my hand. It matched perfectly. It looks exactly like the signature on the defaulted loan for the Range Rover. "Mr. Abernathy said, "the one Paloma swore she never signed." The room went deadly silent. Celia pulled her hand back as if the paper were burning hot. She realized, too late, that the door had just locked behind her. "What is this?" she whispered. "What are you doing?" I stopped shaking. I sat up straight in the chair. I set the pen down. "We are establishing a baseline." "Mom," I said. My voice was no longer weak. It was cold. It was dead. "You tricked me," she gasped. "There is no insurance money." "Is there?" "There is no $450,000. I said, "But there is a recording. And there is a witness." I looked at the door. "You can come in now." I said. The door opened. It wasn't the police. It was Gordon. He walked in slowly. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. He was wearing his Sunday suit, but his tie was crooked. "Gordon," Celia asked, her voice cracking, "what are you doing here? Did you know about this?" Gordon didn't look at her. He looked at the document on the table. He looked at the signature, the one she had practiced, the one she had perfected to steal from her own daughter. "I saw you." "Celia," he whispered. "Saw what?" Celia shrieked. "You are senile. Shut up." "I saw the cards," Gordon said, his voice gaining a little strength. "In your closet. And I just watched you on the monitor in the other room. You didn't even hesitate. You grabbed her hand, and you wrote the lie." He looked at me. There were tears streaming down his face. "She isn't clumsy." "Celia," he said softly, "she was testing you, and you failed. I did it for us," Celia screamed. She slammed her hand on the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "I did it for this family. We needed the car. We needed the money. Paloma has plenty. She is selfish. I was just taking what we were owed, Mr. Abernathy looked at the ceiling, where the microphone was hidden. "I did it for this family. I was just taking what we were owed. Thank you. Mrs. Redfern." "Mr. Abernathy said calmly, "that admission has been recorded, along with your demonstration of the forged signature." Celia looked around the room. She looked at Delaney, who was scrolling frantically on her phone, probably deleting evidence or trying to call an Uber. She looked at Gordon, who was weeping. She looked at me. "You are going to send your mother to jail," she whispered. "Over a car, over money, not over money." "Mom," I said. I stood up. I picked up my purse. I didn't look back at the document. I didn't need it. The trap had worked perfectly. "You refused my daughter." I said, "You left her alone in a box while you played a machine. And now, You just proved that you value a signature more than you value my soul." I walked toward the door. Gordon stepped aside to let me pass. He reached out and touched my arm. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I know. Dad," I said. I walked out of the conference room. I walked past the receptionist. I walked out of the building and into the sunlight. I got into my car. I checked my phone. There was a text from Elliot, a photo of Lark, awake and smiling in her swing. I typed a message to my mother. I knew she was still in that room, screaming at lawyers, realizing that her world had just ended. "You just proved everything." I wrote, I hit send. Then I blocked the number. It was over. The conference room at the law firm was silent. It was not the silence of anticipation that had filled the room during the trap we set 2 days ago. It was the silence of a tomb. The air conditioning hummed a low, monotonous note that seemed to vibrate against the glass walls. I sat at the far end of the mahogany table. My hands were resting on the surface, still and calm. I was not shaking anymore. The fear that had defined the last 10 years of my life had evaporated, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. Across from me sat my mother, Celia, and my sister, Delaney. They looked like ghosts. Celia was wearing the same navy suit she had worn to the trap, but it looked disheveled now, as if she had slept in it. Her eyes were rimmed with dark, bruised circles. Delaney was staring at her phone, but the screen was dark. She was just staring at the black glass, unable to look at me. Grandpa Winston stood at the head of the table. He did not sit. He looked like a statue carved from granite. "We are not here to debate," Winston said. His voice was not loud, but it carried a weight that made the water in the glasses tremble. "We are here to conclude business." He placed a thick file on the table. It made a heavy, dull thud. "In this file," Winston continued, "is the complete anatomy of a decade of fraud. It contains the forensic handwriting analysis confirming the forgery on the Range Rover loan. It contains the digital logs from the scanner at the law office of Bartlett and Stone. It contains the bank statements showing the diversion of funds to the Riverton Gaming Lounge and the Sapphire Seas Cruise Line." He paused, letting the list hang in the air like smoke. "And," he added, "it contains the high-fidelity audio and video recording of the meeting that took place in this room 48 hours ago. The recording where you, Celia, admitted to the forgery. The recording where you demonstrated, on video, exactly how you manipulated Paloma's signature." Celia flinched. She looked at the file as if it were radioactive. "So what?" she whispered. Her voice was raspy, stripped of its usual bravado. "You are going to sue your own daughter. You are going to drag this through court. Think of the scandal. Dad, think of the family name." "I have thought of the family name," Winston said. "That is why I am the one fixing it." He opened the file and pulled out a single document. It was bound in blue paper. "This is my last will and testament," Winston said. "Or rather, it was." He ripped the document in half. The sound of tearing paper was violent in the quiet room. "I executed a new estate plan this morning," he said. "My assets are no longer passing to you, Celia. They have been placed into an irrevocable trust. The primary beneficiaries are Paloma and Lark." Celia stood up so fast her chair tipped over backward. "You can't do that," she screamed. "That is my money. I am your daughter. Paloma doesn't need it. She has a husband. She has a career. Delaney is the one who needs it." "Sit down," Winston roared. The command was so powerful that Celia actually froze. She slowly righted her chair and sank back into it, trembling. "It is not about need," Winston said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "It is about character. You have proven that you view family as a resource to be strip-mined. You viewed Paloma not as a child to be loved, but as an asset to be liquidated. And I will not allow you to do the same to my great-granddaughter." He slid a second document across the table. "This is a formal complaint," Winston said. "It has been drafted by Mr. Abernathy. It details charges of elder financial abuse, federal wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft." He looked at Celia over the top of his reading glasses. "I have already submitted the preliminary evidence to the district attorney's office," he said. "They are very interested. especially given the amount of money involved. Anything over $100,000 triggers a mandatory minimum sentence in this state. Celia went white. "You called the police," she gasped. "I gave you a choice," Winston said. "You can face the indictment. You can go to trial. You can explain to a jury why you left your daughter in a trauma unit to play slot machines." He leaned forward, or he said, "You can sign this." He placed a settlement agreement on the table. "Option B," Winston said, "you will liquidate your remaining assets, the truck, the jewelry, the timeshare. You will use the proceeds to pay off the Range Rover loan immediately. You will attend mandatory gambling addiction therapy twice a week, with proof of attendance sent to my office, and you will sign a no-contact order for a period of 5 years." "5 years," Celia whispered. "5 years." Winston repeated. "No calls, no texts, no visits. If you violate this, even once, I will instruct the district attorney to unseal the indictment and proceed with the felony charges." Celia looked at the paper. She looked at me. "Paloma," she pleaded. Her eyes were wet. But I saw no love in them. I only saw fear. "Paloma, please, 5 years. Lark will be in kindergarten. I will miss everything. You can't let him do this. I am your mother." I looked at her. I remembered the rain on the windshield. I remembered the pain of the chest tube. I remembered the empty chair in the NICU. "You made your choice, Mom," I said softly. "You chose the machine over the baby. Now we are just formalizing it." I turned to Delaney. My sister was weeping silently, tears dripping onto her phone screen. "And you," Winston said to Delaney, "you are not going to prison, but the party is over." He tossed a letter toward her. "I have contacted the landlord of the penthouse," Winston said. "I informed him that the security deposit was paid with stolen funds. He is initiating eviction proceedings today. You have 48 hours to vacate." "No," Delaney sobbed. "No, please. I have a brand deal next week. I need the studio space. I can't go back to living in a regular apartment. It will ruin my aesthetic." I looked at my sister. She wasn't crying because she had lost her family. She was crying because she had lost her backdrop. "Delaney," I said. She looked up, her mascara running down her cheeks. "You don't need an apartment," I said. "You need a job. You need to learn what it feels like to earn a dollar that wasn't bled out of someone else's veins." She glared at me. "You are jealous," she spat. "You always were. You want me to be miserable like you." "I am not miserable," I said. "I am free, and for the first time in your life, you are about to be free too. You just don't realize it yet." The door opened again. My father walked in. Gordon looked different today. He was wearing a clean shirt. He was standing straighter. He walked to the table. But he didn't sit next to Celia. He stood next to me. "Gordon," Celia asked. Tell them they are crazy." I signed the affidavit. "Celia," Gordon said. His voice was steady. "What affidavit?" she asked. "The one admitting that I knew about the fraud." Gordon said, "And that I witnessed you forging the signature." Celia stared at him. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "And I signed this," Gordon said. He placed a document on the table in front of her. It was a petition for legal separation. "I am done." "Celia," he said, "I can't live in the lies anymore. I can't watch you eat our children alive to feed your ego. I am moving into a rental unit near the shop. I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to pay Paloma back for what we stole." "You are leaving me," Celia whispered. She looked truly shocked. She had assumed he was a permanent fixture, like a piece of furniture she could kick whenever she wanted. "I am saving myself," Gordon said. He looked at me. "Paloma," he said, "I know I can't fix the past. I know I was a coward, but I will testify. I will do whatever it takes to clear your name on that loan." "Thank you, Dad," I said. Celia looked around the room. She was alone. Truly. Completely alone. The husband she bullied, the daughter she used, the father she manipulated, everyone had walked away. She grabbed the pen. She signed the settlement agreement. She signed it with a vicious, angry slash of ink. "Fine," she hissed. "Take your money. Take your victory. I hope you choke on it." She stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She tried to summon the ghost of her old arrogance. "I want to see her," she demanded. "Before the 5 years starts, I want to say goodbye to my granddaughter. I have a right." Winston stepped forward. He blocked her path. He was 78 years old. But in that moment, he looked like an impenetrable wall. "You have no rights," Winston said. "You forfeited your rights when you gambled her mother's safety for a jackpot." "But she is my blood," Celia screamed. "She is not a tool for your redemption," Winston said cold. "And she is not an audience for your drama. Paloma owes you nothing. Lark owes you nothing. Get out," I said. Celia looked at me one last time. "You will regret this," she said. "You will need me one day, and I won't be there." "Mom," I said, "you were never there." She turned and walked out. Delaney followed her, still sobbing into her phone. The door closed with a heavy, final click. The room exhaled. I sat there for a long time. I listened to the hum of the air conditioner. I looked at the signed papers on the table. It was over. The debt was gone. The threat was gone. I stood up. I walked over to Gordon and hugged him. He smelled of motor oil and peppermint, the same way he had when I was a child. He held me tight, shaking with silent sobs. "Go home, Paloma," Winston said gently. "Go see your baby." That evening, the rain finally stopped. The sky over our house was a deep, velvety blue, dusted with the first stars of the evening. I sat in the nursery. The rocking chair creaked softly, back and forth, back and forth. Lark was asleep in my arms. She was heavy now, gaining weight every day. Her breathing was a steady, rhythmic miracle against my chest. Elliot came into the room. He was holding 2 mugs of decaf coffee. He set them down on the side table and knelt beside the chair. He didn't say anything. He just rested his head on my knee, in the corner of the room. Sitting in the armchair, Grandpa Winston was reading a book. He had decided to stay for a few days, just to make sure the transition was smooth. The presence of him, the man with the briefcase, the man who had saved us, made the room feel like a fortress. I looked down at my daughter. Her hand was curled into a tiny fist, resting against my collarbone. I thought about the $425,000. I thought about the wasted years. I thought about the hollow ache of waiting for a mother who only loved me when the check cleared. But then I looked at the nursery. It was small, it was simple, but it was paid for with honest money. It was filled with honest love. I traced the curve of Lark's cheek with my finger. I didn't choose revenge. I didn't burn their house down. I didn't scream until my throat bled. I just closed the door. And in the silence of that closed door, I found my life. I promise you, I whispered to my sleeping daughter, "You will never have to buy my love. You will never have to earn your place in this family. You are here, you are mine, and that is enough." Elliot squeezed my hand. Winston turned a page of his book. Lark let out a small, contented sigh. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't waiting for the crisis. I was just a mother, holding her child, in a house that finally, truly, belonged to us. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope Paloma's journey reminded you that family isn't just about blood, it is about who shows up when the rain starts falling. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a rainy evening in London, a sunny morning in California, or somewhere in between? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Juliet Revenge Stories for more dramas about justice and redemption. Don't forget to hit that like button. And if you really want to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it, smash that hype button. Your support means the world to us. Stay safe, and see you in the next video.